Hey, what do you mean Gozer and Heretic are leaving the game? Where do you think they'll go? It's not like the Klingons will have them. Oh, you mean they're leaving Star Trek? Maybe Farscape will have them. No, they won't? Ah, well, we'll see where that goes. Hello everyone, and welcome to another MMO Anthropology, where we're coming into Earth's space dock of Star Trek Online again to talk about the resignation of two, yes that's right, two developers who have recently noted that they're going to be resigning from Cryptic Studios and from Star Trek Online. Figured I'd stand us around near the wonderful little dance area and speak about this. Namely, Senior Systems Designer Geoff, Heretic, Tuffli and Dan Griffis have decided that they're going to be jumping ship in a very literal way. In fact, Gozer says that's pretty much all of it. It has nothing to do with PvP, STO, or Cryptic. It's just time for me to do something different. I had planned on telling everyone on the forums at some point, but probably closer to when I was actually leaving. I'll be here for a few more weeks, he says. These two represent something that feels like a significant blow to the Star Trek Online developer team, which was small to begin with, so hopefully Cryptic has a plan to replace them and continue to move forward. When it comes to virtual communities, developers hold the role of almost politician-level celebrities. Wow, it's kind of busy around here. Lots of people running. And as a result, they have a tendency to take, literally the brunt of the blame of every decision made in the game, and players even take their names in vain when reading through the changelog of the most recent patch. Anyone who has played a game like World of Warcraft knows looking through the changelog to see who got nerfed and what sort of fun things have been yanked, or what sort of weird things have been modified in the UI. Also, I wanted to mention that it's interesting that Gozer mentions PvP in his resignation quote, and that's because Star Trek Online is still struggling on how to properly provide player versus player content. It's been a thorn in the side of much of the community and is considered somewhat lacking in representation. As we've seen in other games such as Star Wars, The Old Republic, and World of Warcraft, PvP can be a huge contributor to the community. Yeah, let's move away from this music. Dun dun dun. Giant Andorian! Have yourselves a nice planet background for a little bit. Player communities look to developers to frame the aesthetic of and the rules of their world. For example, what we're looking at here, the whole presence of Earth space dock, the fact that I can go to Deep Space Nine, which is a real place that I can engage with, the delivery of content and the way that the game presents it to players. Changes to that world are often met with great resistance, as well as sometimes relief by different segments. As I mentioned before, when new patches come out, the patch notes are sometimes dissected to their most minute detail by everyone looking to understand what's changing about the game world and how they play the game, especially for people who have hit the end game and are either running through in-game content or, as I mentioned before, PvP, which is a strong in-game presentation. It's a powerful place for people to continue to get interest and fun out of their game. Sometimes, interestingly enough, even minor UI changes can come with tremendous backlash. We've seen this throughout MMO communities who like or dislike something. In Star Trek Online, an excellent example of this was that when you were standing near the ship choice guy in the shipyards, you could pick through any of your ships. You didn't have to talk to him in order to make it turn on or turn off. You could just stand near him. That was an excellent element, but that got yanked by the Star Trek Online developers, much to my confusion. And the community itself here in-game Well, there's people running past, as you can see right now, or chatting in the box down here with each other isn't the only place that the community interacts with itself. There's also the Star Trek Online Cryptic forums. There's forums everywhere where people talk about how they kit out their ships, what they do with them, how they've reacted to the most recent patch. All of this internal rules making and a community building spills out into the external culture through blogs and forums, and it's how, in many ways, how I look at the way that the community interacts with itself. Not just interviewing people in game about how they see the developers, but watching them, like, in some ways, yell and scream at them on the forums. These are living virtual communities who come to the game with individuals who just play by themselves and then talk on the forums, who bring their friends in to run through the content or fight in PvP, or just grind dilithium in order to get the new interesting toy and be part of the intellectual property of Star Trek, since that has a giant fan community, which no doubt will keep this running, even if Cryptic slows down on their content progression. Then, by and large, they are constrained by the rules of the virtual world, and developers directly interact with those rules and essentially hold and modify the scaffolding that underlies the code and mechanics of the community's virtual world. And as a result, that's why people have such a tremendous reaction to everything that they do. So when they make changes, sometimes even the smallest details can be profound. And speaking of profound, a good example right now is the rollout of the concept of fleet progression and starbases, which is essentially player housing. This all is developed to encourage players to work together, to bind themselves together in groups into fleets. Oh, I got a critter visiting the boxes here. To bind themselves into fleets and to work together in order to progress their fleets, build up their starbases. We've seen some gorgeous pictures of player starbases being built, and the idea that they'd have traffic and that sort of thing. And in a way, this sort of rule will guide the way that the game will move people through it, not just the development of content on the Federation or the Klingon side, but the way that the Cryptic team wants players to interact in-game with each other and with their own fleets. So we have a lot of things to look forward to in many different online worlds, especially Star Trek Online, because that's the focus of this conversation. But being that as it may, since we are losing Heretic and Gozer, I wanted to say, well, fare thee well and good travels. Meanwhile, to the rest of you, this has been MMO Anthropology. Good night and good dreams.